Welcome to Cosmic Disclosure. I'm your host, David Wilcock, and we are here with Corey GOOD. And this episode is something that will be documenting the beginning stage of what you said was probably the most life-changing experience that's happened to you yet in this whole saga.
Most mind-expanding, for sure.
So I was going back over my notes. You started talking to me in October of 2014, and then they asked for you, the Sphere Beings asked for you sometime in February, and it was March 1st that I was taking down the reports of your initial meeting in front of the Space Program Alliance. So
Yes.
This didn't take very long. After you came out with your name and started to reveal your real identity, it was only about a month before you got pulled into this really bizarre world.
Yes.
Now, we went through this Mars colony inspection already,
Right.
and that was quite a heavy experience for you because you basically end up getting arrested, and looks like when you're put in this prison cell that they might have been intending to terminate you.
It wasn't good. But their plans were not good, no.
It's not like you necessarily are looking forward to these trips off planet, correct?
Not only that, it has been the standard operating procedure for them to give me very little, if any, preparation, intelligence, or information beforehand. A lot of times I've been told, you're going to be meeting with this group in this time window, and that's it. And I have very little, I go in blind, except for some of the situations when I've had some of the security support teams go in with me. They have more information than I do.
And you've had to go through very difficult surgeries. You've got new scars on your arms that weren't here when we were taping last time. Yep. And they're not offering you any help, right?
No. I've had a very kind of contentious relationship with the Secret Space Program Alliance Council. They've pretty much told me from the beginning that I was forced upon them. They felt that Lieutenant Colonel Gonzalez was the right person for the job, to be the liaison between the Sphere Being Alliance and them and these other groups as a delegate for these different meetings. They didn't see what I had to bring to the table. I honestly didn't either, but they have given me a lot of pushback. I'd asked for access to technology at the LOC that I knew was just, depending on where it was, a floor or two below me, that was technology that would have helped me, and I was turned down. And that bothered me quite a bit, and I wasn't getting any type of material support down here like Gonzalez gets. He gets material support for his cover life down here. And they've pretty much said, you don't work for us.
In your Inner Earth paper, you mentioned yelling and aggressiveness that took place between you and them. Were there other issues besides what we've already discussed that were going on?
Yeah, there's one that I've decided not to go deeply into. Something that happened with my family.
Lack of adequate protection?
Lack of adequate protection of me and my family, mainly my family, that was promised. There was an incident that happened. My children were involved. I was very upset. Things got very heated, and soon after that, in a meeting, and some of them became very agitated and pretty much straight up told me they didn't like me, they didn't want me, that Gonzalez was doing a better job than I was. He was better diplomat, better public speaker. He was just all across better, and that they didn't want me involved. That I had angered some of the Super Federation Council members by divulging information about them that they didn't want divulged, even though I was never told not to give this information.
Right.
It still upset them somehow. So things got very, very heated between us. There was a major falling out. I noticed I started getting less and less intelligence there for a while, and Gonzalez was going to a lot of these meetings in my place for a short period of time.
Well, and there was also some major obstacle just in your own life. I think you had a surgery or there was a sickness or something was going on. You really weren't in a position for a while where you could have gone anywhere.
Yeah, I had recently had a surgery, and that had something to do with it. But mainly they were trying to prove the point that Gonzalez could do the job all on his own.
Okay.
And they formally made the request that Gonzalez be the person and I be cut out. And that was denied by the Sphere Being Alliance. And after that, when I was brought back up the next time, there were some somewhat forced apologies given to me. Kind of a forced makeup between us, but there's still a lot of tension.
So how did it come about that you get invited to this inner Earth? And did you know that you were going to be going to the inner Earth beforehand?
Gonzalez had mentioned that there had been a new council of the inner Earth groups that had been recently formed, and that he had been meeting with them.
Okay.
And that I needed to mentally prepare that in the future, at some point, I was going to meet with them as well.
Okay.
And then I received a communication from him telling me that I was going to be invited to this important council meeting on a certain date and time, and to be ready.
Well, it seems like the message of the sphere beings, the people that are coming out of the space program are not going to think you can just hum this away. They're going to want to take tactical military action and get results right away instead of this sort of gradual approach where there's no real offensive maneuvers being taken as of yet, and it all leads up to more of a tribunal. They don't really want a fair trial for these guys. They just want to blow them up in a lot of cases.
And they're used to bombing their way out of trouble.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, and including some people like myself, are very careful about what we're saying because they're worried. Some of them are really worried about post-disclosure, post-data dump, what's going to happen to them when the people form tribunals and start deciding what are we going to do with all of these characters.
How well did I Was Following Orders work at the Nuremberg trials, right?
That's not going to fly the next time.
So Gonzalez tells you that an alliance has formed with the inner Earth civilizations. Now, up until this point, as we discussed in the previous taping, you were aware of a reptoid group, a raptor group, you mentioned a bald-headed group, and then the Darrow with the elephant-like noses. Was this what you were thinking of when they said an alliance inside the Earth?
I knew that it was the ancient Earth breakaway civilizations.
Okay. So let's go over that. What are the ancient Earth breakaway civilizations?
Up until before I went on the meeting in the smart glass pads, they had talked about, and it was talked about as in a handful of ancient civilizations that had arisen on Earth, formed their own breakaway civilizations like we have now with our secret space program, that had moved underground and off planet, and then during the cycle of cataclysms that happens naturally on Earth, or at least did for some time, they left the surface population to fend for themselves.
When we look at Thompson and Cremo's book, Forbidden Archaeology, it's a box. It's this book that's this thick.
Yeah.
It's loaded with scientific documentation about very anomalous, obviously intelligently constructed artifacts in rock strata that in some cases are millions of years old.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that kind of stuff, yeah.
Is it possible that those artifacts are the remnants of some of these ancient civilizations that you're describing? Because they drill down into the earth and they find this stuff.
They actually described to me about how dynamic the surface of the earth is. It is far more...
Who's they now?
The inner earth people that I spoke with.
Okay, so we're jumping a little ahead, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That the volcanism, the convection, the earth is very dynamic and somewhat hostile. I mean, they talked about, continents rising and falling.
Sure.
They were talking about when they were first on the surface, a time of much taller mountains and fewer plains. And so obviously the earth is changing a lot faster than what geology and archaeologists think it is happening.
So you acknowledge the possibility that Thompson and Cremo's research of forbidden archaeology could be documentation of ruins that these civilizations left behind as the Earth's surface is churning and turning and spinning around.
According to them, yes. They claimed to have arisen on this planet to be the first human natives of this planet 17 to 18 million years ago.
So breakaway civilizations, you're saying that there were multiple phases of them?
Yes.
When we're saying a breakaway civilization, what are we talking about here? Is there like a great Noah's Ark type of thing where everybody gets to flee, the whole population is saved, and they all go underground when they know there's going to be a disaster?
Typically, it worked out this way. You have the majority of the population on the surface. They become somewhat sophisticated, varying degrees, use your imagination. Then you usually
Are you talking about technology? Do they have
well,
machines and tools?
Yes.
You're not just talking about stone knives and bear skins and fireplaces?
No.
Okay.
And I'm not talking circuit boards and that kind of stuff, but the technology they use is completely different. But a technological civilization, but they have developed, like the priest castes and the elite castes, developed a much higher technological civilization, spiritual technological civilization that breaks away.
Does that involve cooperation with intelligent civilizations that are not on Earth? Are they getting an extraterrestrial endowment of some kind that gives them this higher technology?
Not according to them.
Really?
Yeah.
So they have a decisively higher technology than what the public is even aware of.
Right. And they are so much different than us. They don't have the, they claim not to have the aggressiveness and a lot of the problems that we have on the surface, the social problems.
Okay.
So they were able to develop technologically a lot quicker. They have a whole different way of thinking and interacting with each other. But
was it a classified secret amongst the priesthood that there were these habitable zones inside the earth and that the common people didn't know that there was a place that could be retreated to where you could live down there?
I would imagine so, because they had built these places and they had already begun to habitate there, and they had already developed a space program and were leaving the earth.
Wow.
And when different things were happening, there were pole shifts, there were meteors, they were describing all kinds of different
tsunami.
There were major cataclysms and minor cataclysms that they described. That
super volcano eruption.
Yes, that was definitely one of them. that were occurring on the planet, and they would hunker down and leave the surface population to their own devices. And then after everything cleared up, they would then go and help the survivors of the surface population.
Were these worldwide civilizations? Did they have communication with each other, or was it similar to what we're thinking happened in our own modern history, where you would have different racial groups that sort of independently spring up, but they have their own isolated, closed society and are not in communication or trade with each other?
Everything that they depicted to me was they were very isolationist. They were very, this is a trigger word, but they were very genetic purists. They were very much about keeping their genetic lines pure and not mixing with other tribes that rose. There were other hominids that were arising on the planet during this time period, and they were leaving them to arise and go through the cycles.
The amount of fossils that we have, that we've used to build the evolutionary track record of human beings that you see in anthropology textbooks, all of those bones can fit within one coffin. It's all assumptions. We see a progression of hominid forms that are evolving. There's plenty of room for there to be something that we didn't find, that we don't already know about.
Right.
The evolutionary timeline that we've been given is a belief system that's based almost entirely on conjecture and a very small amount of fossil evidence. Right. It's not like they're finding lots of these skeletons.
But according to them, there were other different hominids, other species that were starting to develop, and they said that the galaxy and the solar system have a template that produces a certain type of life form naturally on in zones that can support those life forms, and that there were other planets at that time in our solar system that had life forms, advanced life forms on them, and on Earth they arose here naturally.
There's some new stuff that's been coming out that's really changing the game, and one of them is the Denisovans. They're finding humans that had like small bodies, not really pygmies, but smaller skulls when they're fully adult. And we're starting to see a picture that hasn't really percolated into the educational system, describing much more diversity in some of the acknowledged finds of skeletons and things like that that we're now seeing. There's also, as I'm sure you know, a very robust history of giant skeletons being found.
And it's one of the reasons these ancient groups moved into the crust, is because it's more stable. It's not only shelters them from the dynamic climatic and all the changes and all the crazy stuff that happens on the surface, but it also shelters them from cosmic rays and all kinds of other things to a certain degree.
You said that there appears to be some sort of energetic field on the surface of the Earth, if I'm remembering this correctly, that causes us to age more rapidly, that we're not affected by as much if you go inside the Earth. Am I remembering that correctly?
Things have changed so dramatically on the surface of the Earth over eons that we are bombarded with all different types of cosmic energy and other types of energy.
Is there some sort of intelligence behind this as well? Does the Earth have a biologically active force that is going to ensure that life on the surface is subject to a certain type of aging process because of an intelligent script for our evolution, perhaps?
This was a part of the inner Earth belief system. Yes, they believe the Earth is a sentient life force being. They believe the sun is. They believe all the planets. They believe our solar system is a living being. They believe the galaxy is.
Do they experience time in a different continuum? Is there like a relativistic distortion of the flow of time?
They seem to experience time in the same linear fashion that we do.
Oh, they do?
Yes. But the lady that was my hostess, she appeared to be in her 30s. She was over 130 years old. So
maybe being shielded from all these toxic influences on the surface, the synchrotron radiation, supernovas, all this kind of stuff, pollution.
And their advanced technology, what they consume,
Sure.
I'm sure has something to do with it.
So we had described that you had a falling out with the Space Program Alliance, and that there was yelling and cursing and aggression, and that Gonzalez becomes more involved.
Right.
So he comes to you and says, the people in the inner earth have formed an alliance. Is that a normal thing to have happened? That sounds kind of unusual.
It's unprecedented.
Really?
These various groups have had interaction and alliances with various secret societies and secret Earth government syndicates on the surface of the Earth.
Yikes.
Yes. And these groups have turned against them.
The groups on the surface.
Some of
Like
these secret
Illuminati.
society
We're
groups.
saying Illuminati type stuff.
Illuminati's.
Whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. I don't like that word because they're really syndicate criminals that are into all these different occult kind of
Sure.
beliefs. But if you want to call them Illuminati, that's fine.
So we'll use the generic term cabal.
Okay.
For those who aren't already familiar with this, maybe this is the first episode they decide to watch. And most people are familiar with the term Illuminati.
They love that term.
You're saying that advanced humans with advanced spiritual capabilities and technology that are living inside the earth have been lending material and tactical and logistical support to these crime syndicates on the surface of the planet.
Yes.
That right there is a major, major revelation.
Yes.
Now, a lot of these bloodline families on the surface, they got their royal bloodlines, right? So are some of these people from inside the earth interbreeding
No.
with the people on the surface?
Absolutely not. They would never do that.
Really?
They discussed how there were other planets in our solar system that had highly advanced human-type beings that lived on them that were very aggressive and warlike and had destroyed their own civilizations. And in doing so, had attracted the attention of outside extraterrestrial groups that came in and relocated these, I don't know, I may have to create a new term for solar terrestrials, maybe. These, they're from our solar system, but they lived on other planets that were habitable at the time. But when the planets were becoming uninhabitable, they moved the refugees to the surface of the Earth. These groups were genetically compatible with the original humans that were left on the surface.
Right. With some modifications, but yeah, basically.
Well, they weren't modified yet, but they all began to interbreed together and form a mixed race, which is us.
Right.
And this mixed race, all these groups mixed to make this mixed human race that is the surface race of humanity. And in addition to that, all of these, what they call genetic farming races, of ETs started to come in that had not come into this part of the galaxy previously, began to flood in and started a new experiment tinkering with all of the genetics of the surface population.
And that's the great experiment, this 22 genetic programs and
Part,
the Super Federation.
Part of the great experiment. The great experiment goes it's far beyond that, but it's part of the great experiment.
Okay.
And the subterranean groups were using them to, they were trying to give them civilization and boost them spiritually.
Which may not be what these genetic tinkerers wanted to do.
Right, in a competing kind of agenda.
Okay.
And this went on for some time. There was often open conflict between the subterraneans and different ET races in the skies and in space.
Wow.
And this, they say this occurred off and on all the way up until even in our current history, people in our accepted current era of history have witnessed the below inner Earth groups in open warfare with extraterrestrial groups in battle.
If they've been down there for millions of years, genetically isolating themselves from one another, they've got their own little civilizations, maybe they have sub-shuttles or portals. We'll get into how they go from one place to another if they've got different cavities of the inner Earth that they're living in. Why now? Why would they form an alliance with each other after maybe warring with each other or separating from each other for so long? What has changed?
What has changed is the secret societies that they used to be allied with have turned against them. We have to go back to the major changes that happened on the surface.
Okay.
After the Draco came out and offered to turn over all their subordinates, human and non-human, to the Alliance for safe passage out of the solar system.
Which is so insanely treasonous against their own allies of every level other than the highest royalty.
Right. After that,
total betrayal to everybody. Sends everybody into disarray.
Yeah. Things went into total disarray.
That shocking betrayal where the Draco Royals say, we're going to give you everybody. You can take everybody you want, just let us go. Throws everything into turmoil. And I'm assuming what you're saying now is that includes the Cabal folks, the human Cabal folks, now turning on their former allies inside the Earth and doing what? What did they do? How did they turn on them? That's the part I'm not getting yet.
There's other groups below the ground. A lot of these different ET groups have what they're calling embassies below the ground and below the ocean, but they're really just bases.
This could be insectoid types, reptilian types.
And all the human-ish types from
right.
the Super Federation. There's all types of embassies.
So there's a lot of places you can live inside the Earth.
Right.
And people do.
Right.
People, in quotation marks.
Yeah. All of a sudden, there started to be a lot of skirmishes that started to occur between enemies that they've had under the ground for a while, and they said that the surface humans have developed technologies that can now get past their defenses. And
they meaning the Inner Earth Alliance?
Earth Alliance.
Okay.
They have weapons that can penetrate deep into the Earth's crust and reach them, and this is very much of a concern to them.
What is this alliance? Let's just spell it out in basic terms. How many groups are in the alliance? Are there reptilians in the alliance? How did this form? In the Inner Earth Alliance?
Oh, no. These are all people that are ancient Earth breakaway civilizations that claim to be humans that developed naturally here on Earth, were not seeded, were not genetically modified, GMO, and they are ethnically diverse from each other, most of them. There were 7 groups.
7 different groups.
Yeah. 3 of them were related, but not, I guess you could say, cousins related. They all wore the same symbol. It was a symbol of Saturn.
The 3 that were related.
Right. And they just had a different jewel from wherever group they were from. One had like a black stone at the 3 o'clock position. One had a jade at the 9 o'clock position. And down at the 6 o'clock position was a rose red.
So this alliance is not reptilians.
Human.
Breakaway civilizations. What is the gulf of time of when these different groups evolved? You said some of them have been here for 17 or 18 million years?
This group at the Saturn emblem,
Okay.
they claim to be the oldest, and they were the ones hosting this meeting, this council meeting.
Are there other groups that are a lot more recent than that in our terms?
Yes, like groups, that are 500,000 years, and I think the most recent was, I think it was 2 or 3 ice ages ago. I can't remember how many tens of thousands of years ago that is.
So these changes have led them to want to form an alliance. Now, if these spheres are showing up in our solar system and they're erecting an outer barrier so nobody can get out, you became the voice through which these sphere beings were going to talk to the space program. They wouldn't talk to the space program directly, I guess because there was a vibrational incongruity or something.
Yeah.
They didn't want to talk to Cabal people.
And they didn't want to talk directly to the Super Federation group, the Draco group, or the Subterranean group.
Oh, so the Subterranean group was in that category as well.
Right, and that's why they wanted to talk to me.
So if they want access to the new kids on the block, they're going to have to go through you.
They were talking to Gonzalez first.
And Gonzalez. Okay.
And then that was the reason they were wanting to talk to me. They wanted to know why they call the Sphere Being Alliance, they refer to them as the Guardians. They wanted to know why the Guardians would not interact with them one-on-one.
All right, so Gonzalez starts having meetings with them and you're not involved.
No.
So let's walk it through now. What is the first thing that happens? Do you get told a couple days ahead that you're going to be going on this trip? How much notice did you get? Let's walk through it.
I was just told a time frame that it was going to occur. I assumed that it was going to be the blue sphere picking me up as usual.
Okay. I
got up, was, ready for this to happen.
And you were given a time to wake up, like a window?
The time, he says, same bat time, same bat channel. It's usually the same time. So, and it was past time that I usually would see the little blue sphere come in the room, and I was thinking, okay, there'd been times in the past where a meeting was supposed to occur, nothing happened, and I stayed up. I got up early for nothing.
So would you get dressed when you get out of bed? Yes,
and usually I just wear like something real simple. I don't get dressed all up like this.
Do you get to bring a backpack or anything with you?
I can't bring anything with me.
Okay. So you get simple dress.
Yeah,
okay.
And usually I arrived at the LOC and then I get a jumpsuit or something else to wear. I was expecting the same kind of thing. I was given no information.
So now you're twiddling your thumbs and whistling Dixie going, what the heck's going on here?
So I go to the living room and I decide I'm going to go to the couch, get on the internet, twiddle around on the internet and see what's been going on. And bright flash of light. Just a bright flash of light. And I'm still...
Like blinding white?
Just blinding, flash of white light.
Okay.
And
Did you feel an electrical sensation or any type of prickling or tingling or anything?
yeah, it was a static.
Oh.
Yeah, and all of a sudden I could feel I was just totally different. The pressure changed. I mean, the environment was totally different.
Like
And,
the air pressure?
yeah, and just the
How
whole
did it
environment.
feel that it changed? Was it
It
more
was
pressure or less pressure?
less.
Oh.
And
Okay.
I could smell stone and mineral
water?
types, And my eyes were kind of blurry, and I was looking, and I could see I was in a giant huge domed room made of granite, and the ceiling, I mean, guesstimating 100 feet tall, and it was huge, and there were 4
How wide
doors,
was the room, would you say?
probably 150 feet.
Okay.
It's
So when you say a
huge.
granite room, is it made out of blocks?
No, it was polished, all one piece polished.
Polished, like gleaming, mirror polished?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. And
So that's the technology we wouldn't have here,
No.
obviously.
and
And
there
what was
were-
the color of the granite?
the granite was a dark brown, and there were 4 doors at each side with people standing on either side of the door. And I was standing there not knowing whether to call out because they didn't
And,
look at me or
and
acknowledge
there's
that
guards
I just...
at each door?
Yes.
How many guards?
Two standing
Okay.
on each
And
side
what
of
did
the
these
door.
guys look like? What were they wearing?
They were wearing white robes with pendants, different pendants at each.
Like amulets on a
Amulets.
necklace? Okay.
And my eyes were still adjusting when I saw a group of people coming out of one of the doors. And then I realized that Gonzalez was there.
Well, when we come back in the next episode, we're going to get into what actually happens to you once you get into this area and all of these amazing things that take place. So that's coming up next time here on Cosmic Disclosure. Don't miss this next episode. It's going to really rock your world. And as always, we thank you for watching.